couldn't walk to your door, couldn't bear to call.
Welcome to the Radiant Enchantress Show today. Thank you for joining us. I am Jane May Jones, co-founder of Magical Earth Retreats, and today for our first full conversation of the Radiant Enchantress Show, I would like to welcome Annissa Coy. Annissa was born in 1968. She is the middle of three girls. She grew up in a small country town in Washington State. Annissa was a happy little girl who grew up on a farm and enjoyed running barefoot with her older sister through the fields that surrounded their house. Then everything changed. Her father started abusing her sexually at the age of 8 years old. Her father was very verbally and emotionally abusive to all of the girls and their mother. Her parents are still married to this day, and her father has never served time or been prosecuted for his crimes against all three girls. At the young age of 16, Annissa had had enough, and she left home and moved 2,000 miles away. She got married at just 17, and shortly thereafter dropped out of high school when she became pregnant with her first child. Now, almost 32 years later, her and her husband Kevin have 4 children and 3 beautiful grandchildren. They have been married now for 31 years. Annissa and her husband own 3 businesses that they run out of their home office on the Pacific Coast in Washington State. Annissa did not finish high school and has never gone to college. However, she is recognized internationally as an expert in her industry and has won many awards and accolades for her accomplishments. She is an author, speaker, teacher, and coach. And just recently, Annissa was honored as the best of the best Woman of the Year in her industry. So let's welcome Annissa.
Hello. I'd like to welcome my dear friend Annissa Coy to the Radiant Enchantress Show. Annissa and I have known each other for probably, I don't know, Annissa, maybe 8 years or 9 years, maybe more.
Yeah, 9 years, I think. Yeah, I think 9 years.
We were both at the time when we met in the restoration industry, and we met at a high-level mastermind group that we were both members of. And as the years have gone by, we've become really very close. We spend a lot of time together in the Caribbean, which is, the ocean is one of our favorite places, and we have that in common. We have a lot of other things in common, and I am really excited to hear and share Annissa's story. So hi, Annissa.
Hi, Jane. I thank you so much for having me here today on the show, and I just love, absolutely love this movement, and I think that it is going to be really great to help a lot of women and young girls to be able to realize that, there's a lot that your story can be changed by you, and how it started out, as I'm definitely an example of my story, started out completely different than what my story is now in my life. And in fact, I remember the first conversation you and I had about this was sitting on the patio. I think we were sipping mermaid water. And
in other words, we were sipping rum.
Yes. That is made with rum. Yes, that is true mermaid water. And we were talking about this, and I remember you at one point, I shared with you things that I never shared with anyone before. And, you said to me, you really need to tell your story because, it'll really help a lot of women and young girls. And I'd never really thought of that before. I always kept very quiet about all this. I was always very embarrassed by a lot of the things that you just told everyone in my bio, that was very difficult for me. But now I realized it was just part of my journey. So,
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was about 5 years ago, and really
Yeah.
we've had a lot of conversations since then about
Mhm.
how possibly
Mhm.
we could help people,
Mhm.
or other women with similar circumstances or even worse. And so it's great that this is finally coming together. So
Yeah.
tell us how did you get from being a 17-year-old wife and mother to where you are today?
Oh my gosh. Well, the condensed Cliff Note version is an awful lot of work, hard work, honestly, on myself, and definitely having mentors, people to support me along the way. There were a few very instrumental people, just a couple actually, very instrumental people in giving me, at the time they may not have even realized it, but emotional and mental support to realize that, one, there was nothing wrong with me. I wasn't broken.
Right.
Two, that my life was up to me, and what was made of my life was not dictated by my past. And that was huge. And like I said, the couple of people that I can think of, a mom of a friend that I had when I was 12 years old, Barbara was her name. I'm sure she has no idea the impact that woman had on my life, but she taught me that I was a person with worth and that I deserved to be treated good, which, coming from an extremely abusive family home life, my father was not just there was sexual abuse. My sisters were abused much worse than I was that way, unfortunately for them. But we were all very abused verbally and mentally. And there's, a feeling of complete inferiority and worthlessness that comes with that. And that was, of course, my dad's whole MO, to control all of us girls, and including my mother. Like, I used to watch my father would make my mom lay his clothes out in certain order for a shower, or he'd yell at her. And then she literally would, when he was ready to leave for work after cooking his breakfast, which of course was never right, and he would berate her about, she would then have to get down on the floor on her hands and knees and put his shoes and socks on him. So,
oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I tell people, when I say, that there was mental abuse, I don't know that they can really get that picture unless you see that. What that did to me, and I remember vividly memories, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, watching my mother do this. It was pretty awful. And so, for me to realize that I was a person that had worth, that had a voice, that deserved to have a choice in her life, was very freeing and empowering. And so, fortunately, I met, in my teenage years in high school, I met an incredible man whom I know you know, that I'm now married to. And, against the odds, I mean, we met when I was 14 years old and got married at 17, had a baby right away. And I had 4 children by the time I was 24 years old, under the age of 7.
Wow.
And I did not graduate high school, as you said. I had to leave because I had quite morning sickness, pregnant with my first child, and it just wasn't working. Was going to go back. Of course, never did. Life happens. I've never been to college, and yet none of that has stopped me from being extremely successful, both financially as well as emotionally. And I very fortunately had the, inkling early on that there was definitely something better in life and that I wanted more than that kind of a relationship. So my husband and I, growing up, he was very young too, when we got together. We beat the odds and we made it. Everyone said we'd fail and that statistically I should have been divorced at a young, early age and a single mother and possibly even, I don't know, a drug abuser or something, according to the statistics. But we weren't. We stayed. We've been married for 32 years. In the next couple of months, will be 32 years. And we only, we have our 4 children and 3 incredibly gorgeous grandchildren. And, life is really great. We live on the beach in Washington, which I've always wanted to live at the beach my whole life.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And we just built our home, actually a new home in the last year. And we work from home, dictate our own schedule, work very, very part-time, and really, really enjoy being with each other. He is my best friend. And, life is really good. And, I don't want to paint this picture that a fairy tale story picture, because my story is anything but a fairy tale. However, it does have a very happy ending. It's in a very beautiful, wonderful place now. However, there were struggles on the way. There are still struggles now, but I've learned with some tools and resources and amazing women in my life, just as yourself, Jane. You've been an incredible woman in my life to inspire and encourage me. And, by having those kind of things happening in my life, I've been able to, I get through the things that come up for me. And some things still do. Your past does not dictate your present or your future. I absolutely believe that. However, It does affect it, right? Like it affects it. It's, in that it comes up, things come up for me. I can literally be watching a movie and see a woman being verbally abused by someone, and sometimes I'm transported back to when I was, 7 years old and watching my mother put my dad's socks on. So, it does affect, but I've learned with some resources and tools and, like I said, amazing women and men that have come into my life to cope with those things, and I have mechanisms in place that help me move forward with that. So
right,
yeah,
I know. When you guys were first married, you worked in restaurants, you traveled around, you did all sorts of things to make ends meet. But when did your life really turn around, and when did that success you talked about start happening?
Oh, yeah. We were literally, people say they were Kraft macaroni and cheese poor. We were so poor I couldn't afford the name brand Kraft. I was like Western family macaroni and cheese poor. We were very, very struggling with 4 children to live on. I think back then we were trying to live on $10,000 a year, which, as you know, is pretty impossible with 4 children, and buy baby diapers and things like that. So when things really started, the first probably 10 years were a massive financial struggle, and we didn't have the help of parents or anybody. And when it finally started really turning around was when we went, and I actually went and did an event. I did an event that I know I've shared with you called the Landmark Forum.
Oh, right, yes.
Yes, that's when things really turned around in life, big time. And that's when I realized that there was nothing wrong with me and Jane, I was in my 30s when I did that. And honestly, until that day, I thought I was broken. I thought there was something wrong with me. My father couldn't be a decent father to me. My mother couldn't leave the man that abused me. And so I was obviously a failure as a daughter. I was failure as a sister because neither of my sisters, were speaking to me at the time because they were just trying to cope in their own lives with all the trauma. I thought there was just something wrong with me, and I needed to be fixed. And when I went to that event, it was a 3-day event, I discovered there's nothing wrong with me. I'm okay. Oh, and that was the most, it was like this huge, massive elephant had been lifted off my shoulders, and I thought, there's hope for me. I'm not broken. I'm not messed up. Like, maybe I can do this life thing and enjoy it, Yeah.
Yep. That's awesome. And so between Landmark and when we met, were there any significant things